everyone, and welcome to the February Telegraph Book Club event with Bryony Gordon. I am Sophia Money-Coutts, writer and Telegraph columnist, and with Bryony, who is someone I've admired from afar from a very long time. But before I get into the very gushy stuff, a little bit of housekeeping, which is you can make this video big on your computer or laptop or iPad or any device if you click the square on the bottom right. So do that and we'll be enormous on your screen. And for this event, I have some questions which I'm going to ask at the end, which readers have submitted in advance. But if you have any technical issues, you can email extra@telegraph.co.uk and someone is on hand to answer that. So that is extra@telegraph.co.uk. So, hello.
Hi.
Hi. It's such a cliche to kick off this event saying you need no introduction because it's a Telegraph event, and I'm sure lots of you know exactly who I'm sitting here with. But you kind of don't need any introduction because you're Bryony, and you are. When I was prepping for this, I was looking at all the things you've done, the running marathons in underwear, and the Mental Health Network, and the many, many, many awards. I decided it was you're the Taylor Swift of journalism.
Oh my God, that is the nicest thing anyone has ever said about me. And I'm going to get that. I'm going to take that and get it printed on a T-shirt.
Taylor Swift on your signature or something in your in
Taylor
your emails. But obviously written, talked, podcasted about mental health. Really, I think again when I was prepping for this for longer than almost not anyone, but you know, if it's not a competition obviously, but if there was a competition as to who had been talking about mental health for a long time, I think you might be on the podium. So and now I think it's 8 books. This is your 8th book that we are.
It's my 8th book, and I feel like all of that, like all of the mental health stuff, came from the Telegraph letting me write about it. You know, because I've been at the Telegraph for 800 years now. 24 years.
Wow.
So yeah, it's kind of like where I started my career and where, because they allow me to write about this form of OCD I have. And the readers responded with such generosity and vulnerability as well. So, you know, to get a bit sort of like woo-woo very early.
Let's get woo-woo.
Like I remember writing a column about OCD sort of 11 years ago.
I was going to say
10 years ago.
So 2012, 13 or something.
13. It was just after my daughter was born, so it was probably 2013.
Okay.
And I remember the hundreds and hundreds of responses from readers. Like someone sent me a jar of marmalade. Just because they were like, I was so touched by what you wrote and we had no idea this was going on for you. And
I love Telegraph readers.
I know. So lovely. And I always remember an 80-year-old woman writing to me, handwritten letter, and saying, I read your column and I realized this is what I've had my whole life and I had no idea. And I hope that your generation is the last generation to go through this stuff in not knowing what it is. And I still remember that letter so clearly, and it sort of sums up why I kind of do what I do.
What you have with it. Okay, so that was say 2013, and then I presume that you continued writing about it. This is going to lead into my first question in a minute. You presumably carried on writing about it, and then Mad Girl came out in 2016, right?
Yeah.
And this is obviously the follow-up to Mad Girl, best-selling #1 book, I think Mad Girl was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So this is Mad Woman, your new book. So I guess the right place to kick off with for this book club event is, in a nutshell, which is quite hard with this book because it covers a lot. What is it about?
It's sort of a bit mad. It's goes all over the place. I was told when I was writing it, like, lean into the madness, Bryony. So basically, Mad Girl. Okay, so Mad Girl covered the first 3 decades of my life in terms of my experiences of mental illness. And this is very much the last 3 years of my life. So it sort of kicks off New Year's Eve 2020, 2019, 2020. And when my life was, you know, I felt a bit like I'd sorted.
Smashed it.
A bit, it's like a bit smug. I was on holiday in Thailand with my lovely family, and I was like, I hope this decade will be a bit more chill than the last one, because the decade before I'd got married, had a baby, gone to rehab, ran marathons in my pants, interviewed Prince Harry, like it had all, like bought a house, it all happened, you know. And so I remember sitting there on the beach with my husband and my then 6-year-old daughter and being like, let's see in a quieter decade. And of course, we all know what happened next.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to, so from the sort of late 2020, really, through, I would say, till very early 2023.
Yeah.
Like, I was very lost, I would say. I was not in a great place. And I was very depressed, but I didn't know I was depressed. And that's kind of, that was interesting to me in itself, because you kind of think when you've done all this campaigning and all this work on yourself and you know all this stuff, but it still catches you out. You know, there's a bit in the book about like symptoms of depression, and one of the symptoms is forgetfulness. And I'm like, forgetfulness about what the symptoms of depression are, because I was like, I'm not depressed, I'm just an idiot. Like, everyone just hates me. And I was very much like, I can't be depressed. I've done that. And everyone's bored of me wagging on about mental health, you know?
You really feel that?
I really felt that at the time.
Yeah.
And I felt like a really quite abject failure, because I thought, I've written about all this stuff and yet this has happened. I
still don't feel great.
This is happening again. And I was, I lost myself in binge eating disorder, and my OCD, the OCD had come back really, really badly. In January 2022, it was awful. To the point that I was almost, I remember the psychotherapist saying to me, you're almost delusional. Like, your brain is telling you things that don't bear any resemblance to reality. And it was really painful. And I had to take some time off work, and, very understanding Telegraph editors, but I was really lost. And and then it sort of all culminated really in the beginning of last year, when I got diagnosed with this kind of heart condition, which I really do think was my body going, are you going to sort yourself out here, because you're really very low. And because it was a real kick up my arse, can I say that?
I reckon.
Guys, sorry,
not swearing, is it?
Sorry to throw the word arse.
Telegraph readers can manage arse.
Your evening. But anyway, it was a real because I since, I very rarely have this arrhythmia after, because I really kind of listened to, I was like, I need to look after myself. I need to listen to myself. I need to stop dismissing myself, And that's what this book is. It's a sort of lifetime of dismissing yourself and dismissing myself as a mad woman, really, and realizing actually a lot of the stuff that I've been through, and a lot of mental illness generally, is actually really appropriate. It's a very sophisticated response of the brain to tell you something's not right in your life.
A warning system.
Absolutely. And we so often we try and like just numb it out, or
override it,
and you just make it worse in the long run when you do that. So I learned quite a lot about myself. I learned I was going through an early menopause, and the effect that hormones had on my mental health, was huge, and how much they probably had on my mental health, like my whole life. And I kind of wanted to write a book saying, I had this like dawning realization at the beginning of last year. I was like, I'm not mad, actually. All of this has been totally appropriate. Like, I live in a world that isn't set up really for 51% of us, it just, and it's stressful and it's difficult, and sometimes we cope in like faulty ways, and I wanted to kind of write a book about that said to women in particular, like, you've been led to think you're a problem, but you're not. That's the subtitle of the book, is How to Survive a World That wants you to think you're the problem. And I'm like, you're not the problem, you're the solution.
And if there's any sort of malfunctioning going on, that's not you, right? That's external.
Or it's absolutely, that's how it should be. Like, it should be, in a way, if you're malfunctioning, that's just your body and your brain doing as it should.
Right. And the warning system again, right?
And like, and I think I wanted to, like, I hope all the books I write and all the things I write, I hope I write about the stuff that makes me feel bad about myself, in the hope that it might make other people feel good about themselves. That's really that's really what I do. And I sort of also write to kind of make sense of it, but also I have this thing like we have, don't we? And this is interesting in like in the context of a book club, you know, because we very much need stories, don't we, to make sense of, you know, like
particularly at the moment, I think.
yeah. And for me, reading books, not just writing them, is like how I make sense of the world, right? And then you have this need for for neat narratives and beginnings, middles, ends, right? So like Mad Girl, and when I wrote Mad Girl, I didn't end, and then we all, you know, walked off into the sunset and lived happily ever after. You know, Mad Girl ended on me having another episode of OCD, and I kind of want to show what the reality of recovery from kind of chronic mental health conditions is, and it's not linear.
Yeah,
you know? It's not straightforward.
Oh, you're better. Tick. Off you go.
Yeah. And when we're cured of it, and the reality is, for a lot of people, it's like you wake up in the morning and you're like, how many masks am I going to have to put on today to get through today? So I kind of wanted to show that as well. Yeah, because I think that's the sort of reality.
It's sort of constant process.
Yeah, and especially a lot of us, you know, grown up. You know, lots of these mental health conditions are really baked in now because we didn't have the help that we, you know, so
should have done.
I always say lots of mental illnesses, you know, all mental illnesses, much like physical illnesses, are very treatable if you get them early enough. So like if you or I were to get a diagnosis of diabetes type 2 today, and we then like changed our diet, exercise, took a medicine, we probably live very long and healthy lives. We may even reverse it, right?
Yeah.
But if we don't, we'll end up getting our foot amputated probably. Yeah. And it's the same with mental illness. So for me, OCD as a child could have been caught, and I probably could have, but instead I ended up developing all these other faulty coping mechanisms for the OCD, alcoholism, addiction, eating disorders, you know, you name it. And
do you think that's interesting? Sorry, do you think that's where other problems have stemmed from then? Is OCD like the sort of the daddy of it all?
I do think so, yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
I do think
everything stems from that.
Yeah, it's like really torturous. I know there's lots of people that believe we're born alcoholics, we're born addicts, you know, and probably, but I do think the first thing I ever, I do think the thoughts, the intrusive thoughts and the torturous sort of element of OCD probably, it was like, I look back and go, no wonder I drank.
Yeah, because you talk about, there are certain things in the book. The bit that really struck me was I don't want to give away any spoilers, but the bit when you sort of thought you were pregnant with an alien, right? And that's very young. So that was out of context. You need to read the book. Everyone obviously has bought the book who's watching this. So you're going to buy the book and read that bit. But yeah, I guess then that's how you were like sort of 12 or
11,
right?
12. Yeah. I really thought I'd seen this trailer. I don't know how I'd seen it as well, because
yes, that bit from Alien, right?
Alien,
Sigourney Weaver
Alien 3, right? I mean, this ages me. And there was like and I knew about the face huggers, or I don't even know how I knew, and this alien that came through the roof in this and ate this person. And I slept in my bedroom under an attic, and I was convinced there were aliens up there, and that one of them had impregnated me in the night. I mean, I look back and go, that is bonkers.
I know, but
I mean, that is like objectively mad
girl. I know, but like poor little 11-year-old you then stressing out about it.
Thinking this thing was going to burst out of my stomach like John Hurt in Alien, right?
Don't let children watch Alien films. Not that you did, but just
but you know what you're like when you're a kid. You like sneak to watch things that you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And I was like, right, I know what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to kill this alien, and I'm going to do that by like going to Chessick, like going on like a fairground ride so many times, so that because it said, you know, don't go on this ride. I mean, it was like Chessington Wild Adventures. It was like, don't go on the vampire ride if you're pregnant, you know. And I was like, okay, this will kill the alien.
Such an incredibly inventive way to try and resolve it.
But it was but it was only, you know, it was only a few years ago that I went, oh my God, that was.
So because that was constantly intrusive thoughts. So that's very much OCD, right?
Yeah.
That's so interesting that you think everything else stemmed from that. Because it's kind of spoiler alert, but not. A lot of this kicks off really with binge eating disorder, right? Which presented itself during the pandemic. So that was a coping mechanism, right? That you didn't necessarily recognize at the time.
Yeah, I think
But then you did.
I think lots of things are, denial is like is like an overarching characteristic of addiction, especially. And so and also like someone said to me this week, what did your husband think of the fact that you were like eating sausages in the middle of the night? And I have to emphasize to people that we were 2.5 years out of me being in an active alcoholism and drug addiction, and things got a lot darker than some sausages in the middle of the night and some hulu or whatever, So it was like, and also I am not the first alcoholic to get sober and cross addict to other stuff. So there is a saying in recovery: deal with whatever's going to kill you first, right?
Yeah.
So lots of people, especially in the early days of getting sober, they're like, right, just if this evening you've got to eat 3 pints of Ben and Jerry's, do it. Whatever you've got to do
if that gets you through,
to keep you from picking up a drink, right? So it was kind of like there was all that going on, but also, I realized it started to feel exactly like the last days of my alcoholism, where the shame and almost blacking out, and that was what I was doing. I was using food to kind of change the way I felt. And food is incredibly powerful, It's the first way that you realize you have power over your parents when you're a child, right? You throw it on the floor or and we know all this ultra processed food, it works much like drugs. And the other thing about it though, and I know, we know binge eating disorder is actually the most common eating disorder there is. If you put together the number of people that have anorexia and the number of people with bulimia, you come up with the total of people with binge eating disorder.
Oh, I didn't know that, right. Okay.
Which is not to undermine those two eating disorders. And in fact, people in recovery from anorexia very often end up developing binge eating disorder.
Okay.
Because this is just science and biology. If you starve yourself, your brain will try and crave, so this is why you also get stuck. Diet culture is actually quite poisonous, and people end up stuck in this kind of this cycle of restricting food, binging it. And often if you say I'm a compulsive overeater, or you go to your doctor, if you're able to to feel able or brave enough to do that, you'll be put on a diet. And actually that's the worst thing you can do, because it keeps people stuck in that thing. It's not a weight issue, it's a soul issue. And if you go into, people send me messages all the time going, I'm so ashamed of binge eating disorder, I've put on so much weight. And I'm like, if you go into this trying to lose weight, you will never get well from it. You will be stuck in it for the rest of your life. So it's about like, but why are you eating? Because for me, it's like, it is, and we know eating disorders aren't about weight, they're about control, right? So, I could, it could be burgers, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be whatever. Do you know what I mean? As if I don't sort out the thing I'm trying to change and the ability to sit with these hard feelings, there's always going to be something.
Driving it. Is it fair to say, because I think even you in the book, it was when you were talking to Naomi, who is
the eating disorders expert.
Eating disorder expert, that's what she is. But, I grew up, as did you, in an era when, anorexia and bulimia were rife at school, right? All got friends who, and you've written about your bulimia before, who have suffered with it. But I think binge eating disorder, is it fair? It's sort of, people go, oh, it's a sort of new one. A bit like the way we're reframing how we talk about ADHD now as well. Some people probably write it off as, it's like, oh, it's not really a disorder.
It's not a thing. It's a moral failing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
And they're just greedy.
And also, yes. But also because I had experienced bulimia in my like late teens and 20s, I thought to myself, because bulimia obviously is binging and purging, and I was like, well, I'm not doing the purging bit, so I'm not.
It's fine.
This is fine. And actually, and this is why we talk about the obesity crisis, but I'm we think of it as a physical health issue, but I think it's as much a mental health issue as anything else. And so we keep shaming people, and you see this all the time. We're actually inadvertently making things worse.
Yes, by making people feel like it's not a problem, or it's not a real thing.
Like why can't you just it's that thing, like eat less, move more. And it's obviously not that simple.
Because
if it were that simple, you wouldn't have this obesity crisis.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Or lots of people, yes, with
And food is
eating disorders.
and it's such a complicated thing. So like I don't have to drink alcohol or take cocaine to live, but you do need to eat food, right?
Yes.
So, getting sober from alcoholism, drug addiction, you just abstain, right? I mean, you don't just, that makes it sound really easy.
Yeah. Just stop one day, it's
Stop
fine.
and it's fine, yeah?
Yeah.
But, with food, you got this treatment, and I think someone else said this, not me. It's like taking a tiger out for a walk 3 times a day, So it's really complicated, really difficult, much more beset with kind of slips, relapses, or whatever you want to call it, than alcoholism.
Getting sober.
And
yeah, because you say in the book that recovering from an eating disorder is harder than getting sober, right?
I think it probably is. Yeah. I think it is. And I think it's a lifetime of sort of conditioning, isn't it?
Yeah. Diet culture, as you said, again, which we grew up with.
Yeah.
Size 0, skinny was the ultimate thing.
And it's still, and I think we've got a lot better at it, but I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's sort of disguised now. It kind of puts on a different like outfit, and it'll go, I saw someone on Instagram the other day talking about, I don't count calories. I eat for my gut health, for my gut microbiome. And she was like, this is what I eat in a day. And I was like, well, you don't have to count calories because there aren't any in your diet. You're just eating some like leaves, So gut, we obviously know there is a huge link between the gut microbiome and mental health and overall health. And I don't dispute that. And I think it's really important. And there are some people doing really important work in it. But there are some people that co-opt it and, to turn it into, just more diet culture. The same thing with this obsession with like blood sugar spikes.
Yeah.
The way I feel about this is like we can shame people who are larger and say they're a drain on NHS resources. We can do all of this, but ultimately it doesn't help anyone. And ultimately we all still exist, and we all have a right to exist in our bodies,
Yeah.
And it's like, do we want people to feel better or do we want people to feel worse?
Same.
And I write this and I do this stuff, like the running, I'm doing this running challenge, which is like running the Brighton Marathon. Then I'm running from Brighton to London, and then I'm running the London Marathon. And the number of people who are like, this is a terrible way to lose weight. And I'm like, but I'm not doing it to lose weight. I'm doing it to show that exercise is for everyone. And exercise is actually an incredibly valuable valuable tool for mental health as well as physical health. So I exercise for the way it makes me feel, not the way it makes me look. And because of that, I do more exercise. You can talk about what you think my health is, and people send me messages all the time and say your knees are going to be destroyed. Well, my knees are fine and I'm holding up great, thank you very much.
Thanks for emailing.
There becomes a point where you're like, is this about you wanting people to be healthier or you wanting to feel superior?
Yes. Well, it actually feeds back to a brilliant bit in your book. I suppose we have a very disordered idea of what looks healthy, don't we? Because there's that bit where you go and see there's a male doctor who's he's busy wanging on about his triathlon that he's just done.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was so funny. He was like,
horrible.
How was your weekend? And I had to have an echocardiogram to check my heart because of this arrhythmia, which by the way was fun. There was nothing anyway. But he was like, oh yeah, I spent the weekend, I did a triathlon. And then he explained to me what a triathlon was.
Thank you so much.
And I was like, I do know what a triathlon was. And he was like, it was really hard because it was in Spain, so it was quite hot. And I was lying there going, okay, well, he's basically doing this on my breasts. And then he was like, yes, anyway. And I was like, I've done a triathlon. And he went, what? And he said, a real triathlon. I'm like, no, a fake one.
What do you think?
Triathlon. And then he said to me, what oh well, it probably wasn't somewhere as hot as Spain. And I was like, it was in Sardinia. He went, oh. And I said, I've done 2 marathons. And he just went, how extraordinary. And it's like whenever I tell people I've done a marathon, they're like, what was your time? And I'm like, what was your time?
Yeah.
And they go, I haven't done one. I'm like, well, sorry, everyone at home. But like, honestly, it's like, do you want me to prove that I did? Do they like? I want to see a certificate.
Where's your medal?
That you didn't walk the whole thing. I mean, even if I had walked the whole thing, it's still walking 26 miles.
Yeah, because we have this thing of what a healthy person looks like. Yeah,
I'm much healthier than when I was thin, and I was very thin at points in my life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But for me to be very slim and thin requires, unfortunately, taking loads of cocaine and existing on a diet of quavers.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Letting the sort of mental health go, right? Because
Yeah.
you'd have to,
And so it's like, you know, there's so many different metrics of health now. Anyway,
Yeah.
I
down with that doctor. I wonder
that
if he'll read
doctor.
it, if he'll come across your book.
He would not. There is no way that doctor is picking up a book called Mad Woman. Or if he is, he's putting like a John Grisham cover on it, or a Stephen Bartlett Diary of a CEO cover on it, or something. You know, like he is not being seen dead reading a book called Mad Woman about binge eating, OCD, and menopause.
That then leads into a point about this book, which I think is amazing, which is one of the things I loved about it is the humor that runs throughout. You know, and as you're talking and making, you have this amazing ability to talk about very serious subjects with this sense of humor. And I was wondering, I mean, Peter, is he a psychotherapist?
Yeah,
he refers to it at some point, doesn't he, in the book? And he goes, "Oh, you're being very entertaining today, Bryony." Do you feel like, because you're talking about very serious and personal subjects, you have to lighten it with comedy, or is that something you do?
I think
naturally anyway.
Yeah, because otherwise we're sitting here talking about a misery memoir, you know, and it's like and we're going. No one wants. I mean, like some people do want to read that. I mean, I don't want to write it.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know. Yeah, it's like I think it's really important to give people hope that like you might be going through this right now. One day you might be laughing about it. Like that's important, don't you think?
Yeah, no, I think the sort of light with the dark and all of those sort of things. It is important, and it's also very English, I think, isn't it, that we make a joke about sort of awful things.
That time I was, oh God, that terrible time. I wanted to kill myself.
Yeah, it's definitely a coping mechanism, though. I think.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it is.
Oh, it's not that bad. I wasn't that bad. It was fine.
You know, it's funny. Like my, my mum does it as well. She sort of laughs. Oh, yes, well, and I think, but yeah, I do. But I do have a tendency to do it in therapy sessions.
Yeah.
And he is like, he goes, right, here we are trying to do your stand-up.
Again. Well, because it's anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. Because I think I do this to a certain extent as well, and I've been told in therapy that it's a thing. If you feel uncomfortable, you can make a joke and it's like, oh, it's fine, it's safe. It feels all right if you can laugh about it. Whereas it doesn't feel all right if it feels very serious and sort of intense.
Yeah,
it's just
it's a protection mechanism. It's a protective mechanism, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also, when I was like in active alcoholism, I used to do it to kind of to make light of quite dark things.
So when you were drinking,
it was almost a form of denial actually then, where something terrible would happen and I'd go into work and I'd make a joke about it and then I'd write my column about it, you know, and I'd turn it into entertainment. It was I remember when I got to rehab, the person there, the person in charge there saying, "You've made an entire career out of laughing at yourself."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Ooh."
Yeah, are you conscious of that? Because I mean, some people could, I suppose, say that with this as well. That again, you're dealing with very serious topics.
I think, but I don't.
Does it bother you?
No, because I think now I use it to kind of to try and help other people. So so I write about what makes me feel bad about myself in the hope it makes other people feel good about themselves. So I don't think I'm laughing at myself now. I feel like I'm more laughing with myself. But also not even laughing. It's just sort of. It is, it's kind of a gentle,
observing.
And I don't think I'm as cruel to myself as I used to be in print. But I don't know. I only know how to write the way I write. It's not,
it's brilliant. There's lots of bits. I was going to ask you to explain. I mean, because obviously there's various characters in there. Obviously Harry, your husband, and Edie, and Peter, therapist, and Naomi. But also there's this character called, do we say Jareth? Is it
Jareth the Goblin King?
Yes. So do you want to explain? Could you just explain? Because those bits, there are these really brilliant bits between Jareth and two others. Again, I don't want to give away any spoilers.
Nigel Farage and Jacob Rees-Mogg.
I didn't know if I was going to. Surprisingly, they pop up in Mad Woman.
I know, but they're not. They don't know. I don't think they know they're in it. And actually, when I came to read the audiobook, it was mortifying. The director he said, So you need to do different voices.
Oh God!
So there is this bit where Jareth the Goblin King is having a conversation
So you just explain to readers or viewers who
Okay, Jareth the
is.
Goblin King is, I don't know if everyone remembers, in the 80s there was a movie called Labyrinth, which David Bowie starred in, and he played Jareth the Goblin King. And he lived in this labyrinth with all these little monsters, and he'd kidnapped this girl's baby brother. And she had to go and rescue him from Jareth the Goblin King. Anyway, I remember watching it, and he wore sort of silver trousers, and he juggled crystal balls, and he had this hair. And I remember he was evil, but I found him quite kind of enticing. And that to me kind of sums up OCD. So I started calling. I remember a therapist once saying to me, give it a name. Give your OCD a name.
That sort of voice, okay.
Yeah, because then it enables you to stand back from it a bit. So years ago, I called it Jareth the Goblin King, which I wrote about in Mad Girl. And then in this book, Jareth is eaten by the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from the Ghostbusters movies. That's the binge eating disorder.
Yeah.
But then I have this idea of this kind of a television station going on in my brain, like a very critical alt-right television station. I mean,
not based on anything.
Not based on anything. And I call it's definitely not based on anything. BG News. Not based on anything but my initials.
For legal reasons.
And it's Jareth talking on a panel with Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nigel Farage. I mean, I remember writing that thinking, they're not going to let this one through. I thought they're going to be like, she has lost the plot now. I think I had to put in, a figure that might be similar to, I had to say something like, figure who bears a resemblance to Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Yeah.
But they then had to do all these voices.
Okay, so viewers, if you want to hear Bryony doing her voices,
you don't
download, buy the book, and also get the audio version because that's 2 sales. So great.
Yeah, but you don't want to hear me. I said I remember sitting in the studio being like, I'm not an actor, and he was like, I know.
I can tell that.
Oh God, it was mortifying.
No,
And I do feel bad because my voice was nothing like Nigel Farage's voice.
Well, maybe that's a good thing.
I made him a bit like wide boyish because to differentiate from Jacob Rees-Mogg's voice.
Okay, well, I'm going to look that up and look forward to that.
I apologise to Jacob and Nigel, who I'm sure are lovely men.
And thank you for their cameo. Thank them for their cameo in this book. Do you think there's a bit in here when you talk about being embarrassed to be in the sort of self-help area of a bookshop with the Brene Browns?
Oh yeah.
And the Carl, do we say Jung? I never know how we say that.
Yeah, Carl Jung. Yeah.
Jung. Do you think that's changing? Because obviously, you've now written, lots of books that you would find in that section. But do you think people now, that doctor's not maybe going to be on the tube holding up this book, but other people, will be. I think of the books I've got on my shelves at home. I've got things like Why Men Marry Bitches and all those really embarrassing things.
But do you remember? Well, I think when we were younger, it was he's just not that into you.
Yeah.
Can you imagine someone trying to bring out a book?
Think like a lady, act like a man.
Just not into you now. It will be like, no, that is not working. So, but the woo-woo, as I call it, I've really embraced the woo-woo as I've got older. And I had this theory. It was because before we have to live in the poo-poo, which is like the patriarchy, and the woo-woo is more feminine energy. Already people are shutting down their computer screens at home.
Too much.
They're minimizing us. They're like, no, they are too big now. The woo-woo stuff I got really into last year.
And when we say woo-woo, do you mean like cold water swimming, which you talk about in this?
Oh yeah,
or do you mean
that. But I mean, but like the sort of books that self-help.
Oh, okay.
That self-help sort of section of I read this book called Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, which is quite a famous book.
Really made me laugh. Sorry, just quickly, that bit when you get into bed and Harry like audibly sighs or something.
Yeah,
it was so brilliant.
What are you doing? And now I'm reading this book, Women Who Run with the Wolves, and it was, it's all about, how women have lost touch with their feminine instincts, and he was just thinking. And I read a lot of things like Brené Brown, and also You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay.
Okay. Oh yes, I haven't really read her.
She's basically like the Queen Woo.
Queen Louise.
Queen Woo. I mean, she's sadly not alive anymore. She would have said she'd left to go to another realm, so she's still with us in her energy.
Great. Yeah.
But so basically, I realised that I had to be relentlessly positive because I'd got to this stage where I was just the only voice in my head. The only voices in my head were that of Nigel Farage, Jacob
Jareth.
and Jareth, and I need to replace them with some kind of more positive ones. So I sort of relentlessly read a lot of self-help, and I'm much less cynical. I think the more sober I get, the less cynical I am, which I don't know how helpful that is to a career in journalism. but it's very good for your mental health.
Yeah.
I love, but I also do think we're talking much more about this stuff, you know.
When you say more sober, just quickly, sorry, before I forget, do you mean the longer you've been sober?
Yeah, the longer I've been sober, but also I suppose the better I am, the more emotionally sober, right? Because actually that on any given day.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, because you must still have, you know, you can sit here being amazing and very positive and laughing about it, but you must still have days or weeks or months, and know that in the future there will be days or weeks or months where this stuff it comes back with a vengeance, you know, and Jareth is there, or the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is there. And I'm sure lots of people will be watching this thinking, well, I'm in the same position, how do I brace myself?
Well, for that. I guess it's like not bracing yourself. So, you know, it's that thing of this too shall pass, including all the good stuff, the good feelings. So enjoy them, you know. And I think also, I think it's when I think about, so this is the way I think about it. I feel that these moments still come for me, or they still happen to me, but they don't last as long. I don't get stuck in them, right? So, and the way I see it is, I do a little bit of work every day for my recovery. You know, so there's a saying in recovery is like, you give the 12-step fellowships an hour of your day, and they'll give you 23 back. And I think that's true. I think about all the energy I wasted in addiction or, you know, depression, and I think, well, I can do this hour of, I don't know, meditation, sitting still, just grounding, cold water swimming, exercise, or whatever it might be. And so I think the more it's sort of managing, it's sort of prevention, not cure, if that makes sense.
Yes.
With anything.
Yes. Because I suppose one can never be cured from this, right? It's going to...
I mean, I don't know. But I think also life it's ups, it's downs, it's, you know, I think lots of these mental health conditions do get sort of stuck in, and Rome's not built in a day. But I think we all get, you know, it's like, I certainly feel as I get older, I do genuinely feel like life gets better, you know, and much more hopeful and much more positive, and I'm learning stuff all the time about myself, about the world. I'm sure there'll be things I'm doing right now that I will look back in a year and go, oh, I can't believe I thought that was normal, you know. And I really look forward to like the next stage in my recovery and what that might be.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's taking things, taking the negatives and flipping them into positives. You know, like in a way, I can see what all of that darkness was about and what I needed to go through. Like I don't think these things happen to us. I think anything we don't address will come up again.
Somehow, it has to come out.
Yeah? So like, and there's a saying that anything we don't address, our children will have to address, and we pass it down through the generations.
Yeah.
So I think of it like that.
Yeah.
I had to have a period of realizing that I used food in that way. And I probably had to have that depression because I thought that I thought I'd been cured by success. I mean, come on, like what? Like obviously, I had to have another fall down the old.
On that beach in Phuket at the start of the
because I was like, everything's fine now. I've got a #1 best-selling book, and you know, and everyone, and I've got this many followers, and people love me. And the universe went, no, I don't think that's going to work for the next 40 years.
Yeah, we should probably also, I should touch upon the fact that, I mean, apart from what you were dealing with, then along comes, you mentioned it earlier, the menopause, right? Or perimenopause, early menopause, whatever expression you want to use. And so that takes up a bit of this book as well. And there's lots in here about hormones, as you said at the beginning, you didn't necessarily know about. So how do you feel like that is that sorted? Like, or is that a sort of
Hormones, yeah. So I think I mean, I'm giving away too much, like
sorry, it's
too
very
much
personal.
TMI.
Tell us
Oh,
how is
no, I
your
love
menopause,
that. I
Bryony?
love that though. Like you're like, I don't want to ask too many personal questions. It's like I have just written a really personal book. People say, "Is there anything you're not happy to talk about?" And I'm like, not really.
Sure. How's your estrogen today?
My estrogen. So like, I think I'm through it. Like I think if I have another. I don't know. It's very difficult to tell because there's all sorts of hormonal things going through. But
Yeah.
I don't have periods anymore.
Right.
So and I learned that the women in my family tended to have very early menopause in their early 40s.
Well, that's a key question, isn't it? Because I was told to ask everyone should ask their mothers this.
Yeah,
and
I asked my mum and she was like, I didn't go through the menopause, Bryony. And I was like, what? You're still having periods? She said, don't talk about it. And what she meant was, and then she said, I had your brother at 40 and then I never had a period again. And
yeah, it's one of those things I definitely felt awkward when I asked my mum about it. Like, it's a thing which I think between our mother's generation and our generation, we shouldn't necessarily go near. You might have completely different relationships with your mothers. But it has to date been, I think, a tricky thing to ask. And hopefully then with us and with Edie and you, it won't be. Again, it'll be a thing that's become easier. But
I also think it's an opportunity. I really believe, this is where I go really woo-woo.
Okay,
right? Like, I believe there's a really witchy magic to menopause. And I believe if it brings, like some people sail through it, and I think good for you. You are sorted.
Yeah.
You've got your life together, right? I really believe that anything the menopause brings up is like your soul saying, are you going to deal with this now? Because if you don't deal with it now, you're going to be dealing with it for the rest of your life.
Down the line.
And for me, it was a moment of going, oh, I've spent my whole life trying to bend myself into this shape to fit this box that wasn't carved out for me, wasn't carved out with me in mind. And I'm sort of sick of doing that. I'm sick of being a people pleaser.
Yeah.
I'm sick of all of this. So it brought up a lot of self-esteem stuff for me that I had to really face head on. And I feel that was necessary. And, you ask how I feel I'm in a much better place today, but I don't take it for granted.
Yeah.
And God though, but I just think it's the best thing ever going through menopause.
Well, that's because I feel like so much is written, there's a certain person in my family who I won't mention who thinks, oh God, everyone's banging on about the menopause. Why is everyone talking about the menopause so much these days? We went through it and it's all fine.
No, but this is, I think there's quite a lot of entrenched misogyny within women about it.
Probably.
So, of a certain generation, I totally hear this. My mum said this.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, your generation uses it as an excuse. I'm like, for what?
Yeah.
And I think it's like, if you sailed through it, great, but do accept that there are, and I know this because Telegraph readers have got in touch with me to tell me that they did not sail through the menopause. They had no help, and they still, decades on, are very, very upset about that.
Yeah.
Now, so I think I also think that if men went through the menopause, it would be the only thing we were ever allowed to talk about. And there'd be
Jeremy Clarkson writing weekly columns about the menopause.
He'd host a show and they'd try out different menopause things, and they'd be like, let's get some celebrities in to see who's got the, who's got the fastest, I don't know.
Something. Cycle.
Yeah.
Something.
And I just
Who's
think,
the hottest?
it's, we sometimes we have to talk about things a lot to make up for the fact we never spoke about them.
Yeah.
And I know from writing Telegraph columns about the effect HRT had on my mental health, that, there are lots of women who read their Telegraphs in the later years who had terrible, terrible times and were not listened to by doctors. They were gaslit. They were, they were given the wrong thing, or they weren't given anything at all. They weren't giving any advice when they were diagnosed with breast cancer. They were left, in a culture of fear.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important we talk about this stuff.
Yeah. No, it's true, which you have done very admirably in the book. I'm aware that we've got to get on to the reader questions. So I think my last question from me is going to be, so this is the second installment of the Mad books. And there was a very brilliant review I read which said it potentially would set you up for a trilogy. Is it too early? It's so annoying people say that. You're busy, barely out. And everyone's like, where's the next one? But what do you feel about that?
What do I call it? Mad lady?
Mad, yeah.
Mad.
No, not mad.
I think I'll have to, I think it, I can, yeah.
Well, wait and see.
We'll see. I mean, I guess But I guess I probably, like anyone, I will learn new things. Hopefully, like I don't know. I mean, I think I probably want to. I probably want to do some. I definitely want to do some fiction, like you.
Oh, okay.
Can you give me some tips?
No, I can't. Well, no, I can't. It's so. I mean, they're both so hard, aren't they? Yeah. We did YA last year, though, right?
I did, yeah. That
First
was
YA
that was
novel.
my sort of like, I'll do like mini fiction
Yeah,
to
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of get
yeah.
myself. I've got an idea for a book that I need to sit down and start writing.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, so for the moment, we
but
don't need
no,
mad geriatric.
no, it's not like
It's a while off.
I like it's like I love that review in the Telegraph. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, they make it sound like the Lord of the Rings or something.
Coming to a cinema.
Will I
near you.
reach? Will I
So
reach?
good.
Was it Mordor?
Yes, something about the ring. Not go there about rings, maybe. Okay, I think, look at my list of housekeeping. We need to now go on to subscriber questions. First of all, I really like the one from Ivan, if you're watching. It just says, looking fab, Bryony. How nice is that? So there we go.
Thanks, Ivan.
Yeah, there we go. One from
You're
D.
always my favourite, Ivan.
Also one from D saying, how is your mum? I miss her columns.
She's all right, yeah.
She's in here. She appears in here. So.
She does, yeah. She's yeah. You miss the columns. Get Mad Woman because she's there in that quite a lot. She's good. She's
Yeah.
she's ticking along.
Okay, good. There you go, D. Right, this from Nicholas. How do you recommend people assess the myriad sources and self-help suggestions that appear on the internet? We all do this thing, right? If we're feeling a bit, I do it with any single, like I've got a sore toe and I Google sore toe, whatever. Some are helpful, some are nonsense. How do you tell the difference?
That's a really good question. Those actually, I think there's something in that book where I was like, it's woo woo or wellness fad, how to tell the difference. You know? And it's like, do people want to take money from you? Probably don't. What fad?
Yeah.
Does it make you feel? I don't know. I think, is it about empowering you to feel better? Then it's probably a good thing. I wouldn't look for any advice on mental, like on social media. I wouldn't, that if you're going to, just make sure they're people that know what they're talking about, experts, I suppose.
Yeah. Not someone on some forum that you.
No, but it's very tempting if you're experiencing OCD or something terrible, to get sucked into those forums.
Yeah, and they can be helpful, right? Sometimes if you feel like there is someone out there, there's this thing that you don't quite know what it is, and you feel ashamed of it, but you find people talking about it in a sort of safe space online, then you do think, oh, here are my people, right?
Yeah,
like,
thank God. I think that's true. I think I think it's, listen, this person's a very,
this is Nicholas.
Nicholas, you're an intelligent man. You subscribe to the Telegraph.
Quite.
Use your common sense, Nicholas, because I know you have it.
Okay.
I would also, it's a hope that one day we'll have more sort of regulation of.
I know, me too. Don't we all? Same with social media.
Yeah.
That's a whole other book club event, isn't it? That's another hour we could do on that. Okay, this from Tracy. As a person diagnosed and on medication for bipolar disorder, I sometimes find when my periods of stress increase in the short term, I start to struggle. This has been particularly exaggerated by menopause with its associated symptoms of brain fog, anxiety, etc. Does Bryony have any suggestions for coping during such periods until things get back on an even keel? So that's short-term.
So I would say, Tracy, thank you for that. And thank you for being open about your diagnosis. I would say that sometimes it's accepting that things will be stressful. So we have this real notion that we have to how am I going to not make this stressful?
Right.
How am I going to, and actually the kind of stress comes from the kind of the gap between between your expectation and the reality. And if you just go, okay, for the next 2 weeks or whatever, because I've got something going on, it's going to be stressful. What can I put in place to sort of, to make sure that is not so, but just accepting it and going with it, I think is the kind of
not trying to resist.
Yeah, because it's the resistance
that takes up energy.
Yeah, the problem comes in the resistance.
It's sort of easy. How do you not do that though? Just sort of consciously.
I guess you would
relax.
set the resistance as well.
Yeah. It's
those moments where you just go, okay, this is just going to be stressful. So,
Lean in. Who's
you
that?
know,
Who says lean in?
is it Sheryl Sandberg?
Yeah, lean in. Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, there, Tracy. Hopefully that. Yeah, you just have to go. Okay, we will get there. This too shall pass.
This too shall pass. Yeah.
Too shall pass. Sean, this is similar, but as someone who has to work incredibly hard to maintain their mental health, what strategies do you use to navigate your emotions in response to the criticism and unkind comments that are inevitably a minefield for someone in the public eye? So basically, how do you, because
That's a
you
good
get a lot of
question.
flack, right?
I do get a lot of flack.
And I, do you read the comments? Do you not read the comments?
So sometimes I do.
Engage with it.
And I go, oh my God, why did I do that? And I read the comments and I think, oh, that's why I do what I do. Because I also get a lot of messages from Telegraph readers being very supportive and lovely. And I think we have a tendency to focus on the negative ones. And
remember the negative and
yeah,
completely forget the positive. That's another brain trick, isn't it?
Yeah. And I do love the ones that are like, are you being paid to write this drivel? And I'm like, yes, I am. Are you being paid to write this comment? No. And I get a lot where they say, my other favorites are, oh, you've managed to write an article without mentioning Harry and Meghan. And I go, oh my God, but you haven't managed to write a comment without mentioning them, I think to myself. Anyway, so what I do is I go, this is why I do what I do, because as long as there are people that think that I shouldn't exist or I should shut up because I'm a woman or I'm fat or whatever they want to say, then I need to carry on doing what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sort of gives you fuel in a way sometimes.
Yeah, and also accepting that that isn't everybody.
Yeah.
It may look like it is, because what happens is you get these comments and people kind of froth themselves into a rage, and then anyone who's going to say anything nice is not going to go there, because why would you? Like, why would you?
Yeah.
So I go, and they tend to come to my inbox or whatever, which is nice. So, but it is hard, and like I wouldn't be human if I said that I let it all wash off me, because I don't. Sometimes I get really upset by it,
yeah.
and that's it. It's just like, okay, well, that is just upsetting, so I'm going to now stop looking at it.
Yeah.
I always think like the only diet I ever put myself on is like an eye diet.
Okay.
And I think we could all do with this.
Oh,
right?
I see an eye, like these eyes.
So yeah, so if you spend a lot of time or you're watching the news, or there's negativity, you need to there's a lot of it, you know, and we kind of bombard ourselves with it, and I'm not sure our brains are made to deal with this kind of constant 24/7 bombardment of bad news.
No, totally not.
So I'm like, you've got to sort of look at nice things, read nice things, go outside, look away from the screen, get your head back in the up and out as opposed to down and in.
Actual world. Talking about things coming into your inbox, do you feel, as it were, do you feel the pressure, because you are now such a sort of mental health figurehead, is that the right or wrong word? But do you feel the pressure, and I know you get sent lots of stories, from people who, like some of these questions, people who are struggling. Do you feel the pressure to try and, you probably can't respond to every single thing.
I can't. So this is why we started.
How do you deal with that?
I've started doing like an anxiety aunt. This is what the health editor at the Telegraph calls it.
Okay.
Anxiety aunt column.
Yeah.
So that there, I feel like that provides a space,
Yeah.
and also, obviously, I'm not an expert. I just have a lot of experience of it, and so what I try and do is, these are I get a lot of questions about OCD or depression, and I'm like, I try and then write a reply that involves all the sort of expert advice that I have accrued over time, in the hope that it's there, and so then I can't, because I can't, obviously I can barely help myself some days,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So
but then some days are easier.
Yeah, so that's what we've started to do. So so there's a how are you really column, and you can either go on the website and like submit your question anonymously, or you can email me at howareyourreally@telegraph.co.uk.
Okay.
And I'll read all of those. I can't reply to all of them, but you then see what are the big issues that people are facing, and you can then provide that resource for them so that they can get help.
Yeah, talking of, I suppose, questions that are on the same theme. There are a few here about sort of government funding. There's one here from Tony saying, if you were a policymaker, what would you do? What I mean, presumably the government aren't doing nearly enough, haven't been doing nearly enough for a long time. There isn't the money for funding for mental health.
No, there's no funding.
How positive or negative do you feel about where we are as a country with that at the moment?
I don't feel great about it. I think it's definitely gone backwards. So there's a lot more talk about mental health, a lot less funding. So there's more people wanting to access the service and not as many services. So, but also I do think COVID had the effect of really knocking it down the list of priorities.
Yeah.
And I suppose my view on it is that I've come to the view that it kind of doesn't matter, and this is not to get governments off the hook or people in power off the hook, but it wouldn't matter how much money you threw at the system, because it's kind of the system in itself that's the problem. It's the way we live our lives.
Yeah, there's a more fundamental change that needs to happen. It can't be sort of government driven.
Well, I mean, like, arguably you might have to just kind of overthrow the government to have people, you know, like...
Oh, Bryony Gordon calls for revolution.
No, but
exclusive.
What I mean is the way we live our lives and the things that we have to prioritize. You know, we do prioritize work over family. You know, we have to. You know, these are priorities that are sort of baked into society. And I think until we sort of start changing that and realizing, you know, I suppose it's defining what success is. You know, for lots of people, it's earning lots of money. It's rising up the ranks of companies and all of that stuff. And that stuff is not great for your mental health.
No,
you know?
Yeah.
But then again, not having any money is terrible for your mental health.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So like, there are a lot of questions. You know, I've got far more questions than I have answers, sadly.
Yeah.
But I do think we ourselves have to make that sort of change and go, actually, no, this is not how I want to live my life, you know. So I think that, you know, the systems themselves, that, you know, the policies, there's so many policies that cause bad mental health.
All of them, yeah.
Yeah. I think there's also a lot of kind of, I think we need far more onus on community and helping each other and looking out for each other.
Yeah.
But I also feel, but at the same time, I'm like, we can't expect, you know, I've seen politicians, prime ministers, you know, on World Mental Health Day or World Suicide Prevention Day say, you know, if you are feeling low, please talk to someone. And I want to say to them, well, who do you expect? Who would you like them to talk to?
Yeah.
Because there is no, you know, and so
you're not giving any provision for.
Yeah, so we can't. So it's very complicated. So that's not really much help at all. But I hope that by talking about this stuff more, we'll get there eventually. But it may be generations to come.
Yeah, I wonder if it's almost as if because society as collectively, you know, it's more part of the conversation now. The government thinks, oh, well, they're doing it amongst themselves. We can just take the money.
Well, I suspect that's what they hope. Yeah. But absolutely not. You know, like this is, but it's a much wider conversation, and I think it's you know, good mental health practice. You know, ideally we want to help people before they, you know, we want to stop people from getting to the crisis situation, you know, and getting stuck in the system, you know, and you know, people are doing their best, and there's, you know, amazing people working in the NHS, you know, and it's you know, and they take the brunt of it.
Yeah, very, very front line. Yeah. Do you think? I mean, this is actually not really. I was just thinking, leading on from that. I mean, we're still very much dealing with because obviously this is, you know, this was all born out of the pandemic, right? We're very much still dealing with. Everyone's dealing with their own repercussions of those
Absolutely.
mad.
Yeah, I don't think we'll understand the effects on mental health of the pandemic, the lockdowns, for decades. I mean, you know, just children being kept out of school for like up to a year. That the last time that happened was World War II. You know, and we can see in real time the effects that's had on, you know, children's mental health, children's safety. You know, so. I think also there's that tendency to want to just move on and be like, oh, and I think it was really bad for a lot of people's mental health, really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, but kind of like, I also want to say, that's okay. That's not. That's the kind of appropriate response.
Yes. Again, it comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, isn't it? It's not, or the how to survive in a world that thinks you're the problem. It's people.
I mean, the pandemic was the first time that I'd felt depressed, and I'd felt everyone else was depressed
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well
yeah,
too. You know,
or something. Misery loves company. Yeah,
yeah. And I thought, well, that's appropriate. Of course, everyone's depressed because we're all locked down in a and we're not allowed
Completely
to
abnormal.
socialize
life.
with each other. So you know, I'm very glad it's over.
Yeah.
Just talking about it gives me sort of like,
I know. And I still try and avoid, there's, lots of dramas and things on telly being made about it at the moment. And I still can't really watch a lot of that because I think it's sort of too soon in a way to dive back into.
It's for,
how mad it was.
Coming up for 4 years ago that it started, and I go, what?
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, in March it will be,
March the 23rd.
Yeah, exactly. I remember. You must stay at home. We nearly have to finish, but I'm going to just ask it's completely on a different subject here because I think there might be people who are writers or want to be writers or journalists who will be watching this. And there's a question from Marine here, which says, how can early career journalists cope with imposter syndrome in the newsroom?
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Okay, listen. Who's this from?
Marine.
Marine.
Marine. I don't think it's a typo. It's like marine, like a marine.
Like the sea.
Marina, but marine with an E.
Okay, Marina.
Any French?
Marine. Okay. So I saw the other day there was a woman who's the CEO of some big company in America, and she was asked this question about imposter syndrome, and she said to the guy interviewing her, don't ask me that question. You are not asking that to the men, okay?
Yeah.
Like imposter syndrome is in itself sort of creation to kind of, it's to bring women down. Like, and everyone experiences it, male, female, whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just acknowledge that you're not an imposter. Of course, you feel like an imposter because you live in a society that hasn't been set up for you, because it is a patriarchy. And I know there's going to be people at home watching this going, "Oh, Bryony, shut up."
Yeah.
But it is
Buzzword,
so of course you do feel like an imposter because the society is not set up for you.
Yeah.
But you are not an imposter in your own life. Go out and dazzle, Marine. Go out and show that newsroom what you're made of. They need you in there.
Totally. I mean, a newsroom's probably, they've changed. Did you say 24 years you've been at Telegraph? It's much less male, presumably. No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think
so. They've become less sort of male dominated.
But they're tough places.
Yeah. Yes.
But I think if you can survive in a newsroom, you can survive anywhere.
Yeah. I often think that and they can also be very exciting places, right? When a story's happening, or when you're being sent off to interview Prince Harry, or when there's a royal wedding on.
Oh yeah, that's
you want to be there.
Joyous moments.
Really, really fun times. Yeah. Well, that's probably quite a happy note to end on, maybe.
Thank you.
Unless there's anything else you want to add.
No, I've had a lovely time chatting to you, and thank you everyone for tuning in this evening.
So this is out now, everyone, in all good bookshops and online. So I think it's just to say thank you very much for your time and good luck with everything and with your running. Good luck. I think subscribers, keep an eye on the Telegraph Extra website for all sorts of special offers and things that you can sign up to. And thank you very much for joining us this evening. And I hope you enjoy the book.